Nobody expected this to be the breaking point. Not a loss, not a bad game, not even getting knocked to the floor on national television. But one interview, one moment of silence, and one decision too many may have pushed Caitlin Clark past the point of no return. Because right now, whispers are turning into rumors, rumors into reports, and reports into a question the WNBA never thought it would have to answer. What if its biggest star is done playing by their rules? For months, the narrative was simple. Caitlin Clark was supposed to wait, learn, pay her dues, smile for the cameras, accept the bumps, be grateful for the opportunity. But something changed, and it didn't change quietly. It started with the Olympic roster. When Team USA announced its squad for Paris, the omission hit like a thunderclap. The most talked about player in women's basketball, the one selling out arenas, the one driving ratings, nowhere to be found. The explanation? Experience, chemistry, veteran leadership. But fans didn't buy it, and neither did players. Because this wasn't just about basketball fit. It felt like a message. You might be famous, you might be valuable, but you're not one of us yet. That alone would have stung, but what followed turned discomfort into resentment. Once the season began, Caitlin Clark wasn't just guarded, she was targeted. Hip checks away from the ball, hard fouls with no whistles, contact that crossed from competitive into personal. And the most unsettling part? The silence. The league didn't step in immediately. The penalties came late. The tone from the top felt distant, as if the chaos was acceptable collateral. Then came the interview. The commissioner, speaking calmly, tried to frame it all as rivalry, as marketing, as good for business. No strong condemnation, no clear protection. For Caitlin Clark, that moment may have landed harder than any foul. Because imagine being the player generating record revenue, only to hear the environment surrounding you described as beneficial. That's not support, that's dismissal. And now insiders are saying that dismissal has consequences. The narrative has flipped. This is no longer about waiting her turn. It's about walking away. Because if the rumors are true, if Caitlin Clark has quietly decided she's done with Team USA, this isn't a tantrum. It's a power move. And the fallout? It would change everything. But before we get there, you need to understand what really happened behind the scenes. Because the Olympic snub was only the beginning. Because once the Olympic door closed, everything else started to feel intentional. Think about the timing. Caitlin Clark wasn't struggling. She wasn't overwhelmed. She wasn't fading into the background. She was breaking rookie records, leading the league in assists, dragging new fans into arenas that used to struggle to sell tickets. And still, she was left off the biggest stage in the sport. That's when the whispers about resentment started to get louder. For years, Team USA had been a closed circle. Same veterans, same hierarchy, same voices controlling the room. And suddenly, here comes Caitlin Clark, with more attention than anyone before her, with cameras following every move, with fans chanting her name in opposing arenas. That kind of spotlight doesn't just change the game, it threatens legacies. Some veterans welcomed her, others didn't. You could feel it in the quotes, the side comments, the tone. Reality is coming. That line was supposed to humble her. Instead, it aged badly. Because reality did come, and Caitlin handled it just fine. But while she was adjusting to professional basketball, something darker was happening around her. Opponents weren't just playing her hard, they were sending messages. Blindside contact, extra shoves, hits when the ball wasn't even live. And again, no immediate response from the league. That silence matters. Because when leadership doesn't draw a line, players draw their own. And then came the commissioner's comments, framed as rivalry, framed as business value, framed as something to be managed, not condemned. For fans, it was frustrating. For Caitlin Clark, it may have been clarifying. Because here's the emotional shift that changed everything. Up until that point, the story was about perseverance, about proving people wrong, about earning respect. But after that interview, it became about self-respect. And that's when insiders say the conversation changed behind closed doors. Not publicly, not dramatically, quietly. People close to Clark started hearing different language. Not anger, not bitterness. Detachment. A sense of, if this is how it's going to be, maybe I don't need this. And that's the part the league didn't anticipate. They assumed the Olympics were the ultimate carrot, that representing Team USA was an honor too big to refuse. But Caitlin Clark isn't operating under old assumptions. She knows her value. She sees the numbers. She understands the leverage. And if the national program doesn't protect her, if the league won't set boundaries, why keep offering her brand to systems that don't return the favor? That's why these quit rumors won't go away, because they aren't coming from emotion. They're coming from strategy. And if this really is Caitlin Clark pulling back from Team USA, then the next question is terrifying for the league. What happens when the face of the sport decides she doesn't need the badge anymore? That's where this story turns from controversy into crisis. This is where the power dynamic flips, because for the first time, Team USA may need Caitlin Clark more than Caitlin Clark needs Team USA. That's not arrogance, that's math. Look at the numbers. Ratings spike when she plays. Attendance jumps when she's announced. Merch sales follow her name, not the jersey. She didn't inherit that power. She earned it in real time. And here's what insiders are quietly saying now. Caitlin Clark isn't raging behind the scenes. She isn't making public demands. She isn't threatening anyone. She's doing something far more dangerous. She's disengaging. According to speculation circulating among league insiders, Clark has privately signaled that she has zero interest in future Team USA involvement if the current culture doesn't change. Not a press release, not a dramatic exit, a quiet line in the sand. And when stars go quiet like that, organizations panic. Because this isn't about Paris anymore. Paris is gone. This is about the next 4 years, the road to Los Angeles, the marketing campaigns already being imagined, the global push for women's basketball. And suddenly, the centerpiece might not show up. Imagine that headline. The face of women's basketball declines Team USA. It would be unprecedented and devastating, because Team USA has always operated under one assumption, that players need the program for validation, that Olympic gold is the ultimate reward. But Caitlin Clark shattered that assumption in one season. She proved something no one was prepared for. She is the system right now. And the league's earlier choices, the snub, the silence, the messaging, they all come rushing back in this moment. Because now those decisions have consequences. You can't haze the future and then ask it to carry you. You can't market a player relentlessly while minimizing her experience when it gets uncomfortable. And you definitely can't expect loyalty after public dismissal. That's why this feels different. This isn't a rookie being emotional. This isn't a star throwing a tantrum. This is a business-minded athlete protecting her brand, her safety, and her mental space. And if she really walks away from Team USA, the league doesn't just lose a player, it loses the centerpiece of its next era. But here's the twist. This story still isn't finished. Because there's one more group caught in the middle of all this. The veterans, the leadership, the people who helped create this environment. And part 4 is where we ask the question nobody wants to answer. Who actually pushed Caitlin Clark out? Here's the uncomfortable truth. No one person pushed Caitlin Clark out. A system did. A system built on tradition, hierarchy, and unspoken rules that were never designed for a star this big, this fast. Because let's be honest, Caitlin Clark didn't just enter the WNBA, she disrupted it. She changed who the league caters to. She changed who the cameras follow. She changed who the casual fan shows up to see. And that kind of disruption creates tension. Veterans weren't wrong to want chemistry. They weren't wrong to want respect for what they built. But here's where it went sideways. Instead of guiding the transition, the system resisted it. The Olympic snub wasn't framed as not yet. It felt like not welcome. The on-court physicality wasn't checked early. It was tolerated. The commissioner's comments weren't empathetic. They were transactional. Each moment alone, survivable. Together, alienating. And that's the key word here, alienation. Because Caitlin Clark didn't just feel unsupported, she felt isolated. Imagine being told you're the future while being treated like a problem. That contradiction wears on you. And here's where leadership failed. No clear voice stepped in early and said, "This has gone too far." No strong statement drew a hard line between competition and targeting. Instead, players were left to police themselves. Fans filled the void, narratives spiraled, and when veterans finally spoke up, It was after the damage had already spread. That's why this isn't about blaming Diana Taurasi, or one foul, or one interview. It's about accumulated silence. Silence from decision makers who assumed Caitlin would endure it, because stars always do. Except this one didn't have to. And now the league is facing the cost of that assumption. Because if Caitlin Clark walks away from Team USA, even temporarily, it sends a message louder than any press conference ever could. It says, prestige doesn't excuse neglect. Tradition doesn't outweigh respect. And the most dangerous part? Other young stars are watching. They're learning how the system responds when you become too big, too fast. Which brings us to the final, unavoidable question. What happens next? Does the league course correct or double down? Because part 5 isn't about rumors, it's about consequences. This is the moment that defines everything. Because if Caitlin Clark truly steps away from Team USA, the damage won't show up in a box score. It'll show up in silence. Silence where excitement used to be. Silence where new fans expected to see number 22 wearing red, white, and blue. Silence where the league thought loyalty was guaranteed. And make no mistake, this wouldn't just hurt Team USA. It would force the WNBA to look in the mirror. Because you can't build your future on one player's popularity while dismissing her lived experience. You can't celebrate growth, revenue, and ratings while ignoring the human cost of how that growth happens. If Clark walks, it becomes the most powerful statement of the modern WNBA era. Not because she's angry, but because she's choosing boundaries. And that choice would ripple outward. Sponsors would notice. Broadcast partners would ask questions. Young players would pay attention. The league would be forced to confront something it's avoided for too long. Stars today don't just want opportunity. They want protection. They want clarity. They want leadership that shows up before things spiral. And here's the final twist. This isn't irreversible. Not yet. If the league course corrects, if leadership acknowledges mistakes, if the culture shifts from endure it to we've got you, Caitlin Clark could still be part of that future. But if nothing changes, then this won't be remembered as a rumor. It'll be remembered as the moment the WNBA let its most valuable asset drift away. Not because she wasn't loyal, but because she was finally listening to herself. And that's a lesson no league can afford to ignore.